Okay, good morning. Buenos dias. It's great to be here in Madrid. I'm a great footballing city. I'm from Liverpool originally, so we share a lot of common when it comes to the European Cup. Okay, so on with what we're doing today. So my name is Mike White. I'm with the Asian Development Bank, and I've been working with water supply and sanitation as an engineer and more recently as a financier in the sector, pretty most of my career. So anyway, title is Adopting Smart Water Solutions in Asia's Developing Countries, Challenges and Opportunities. So what I'm going to talk about today is, who is Asian Development Bank? What do we do? Then there's, 2, 3, and 4, we're looking at the SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. They're very important for developing countries, maybe a little bit less so in terms of targets for developed countries, but very important and are a catalyst for change. Then we'll look at common water sector challenges in developing countries, how adopting citywide inclusive sanitation, and looking at how ADB is working with to promote water sector digitalization across this project. And then finally, I'll invite my colleague Anastasia Carolina to give an Indonesia context to all of this. So firstly, just a quick summary. Who's Asian Development Bank? Well, we are a regional development bank established in 1966. We have 68 member countries, 49 of which are developing member countries and span the globe from Georgia all the way around to the Pacific. Headquarters are in Manila. That's our headquarter building now. And we have about 31 field offices. We provide loans and grants to sovereign governments for infrastructure, long-term economic development, and poverty reduction. We also have a growing private sector and PPP operations, and that's significant in our vision for 2030 to have almost 50% of our work in that part of the business. So we monitor project implementation. We don't just give money. It's monitored all the way through the process, and we support project and capacity development. There's an additional change now, which is obviously climate change. We're all aware that, but ADB wants to be the regional climate bank. So we have a focus to reach a target of 100 billion in climate financing by 2030. We manage grant support from donor governments, and one of those, the government of Spain, generously provides funds for us to look at water sector initiatives. So we already have a facility with the government of Spain to support that. We also, more recently, in the past 5 to 10 years, looking more closely at new water technologies and digitalization. Okay, so why talk about the Sustainable Development Goals? These, in Asia, these are really a catalyst for change. We were all aware of the Millennium Development Goals, which were mostly reached by most developing countries by 2015. However, as many of us will know, the MDGs were basically, the targets were very much aimed at basic sanitation, delivery of sanitation and water services, and not so much on quality. And this, obviously, that was an easier step to take than it was really the only start of the story for developing countries. And it was succeeded by the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. I think there's 15 or 16 of those, which I won't go into, but we're concerned with SDG 6. And this is a significant upgrade, focus switching to sustainability, equity, and access for all. So water, and to some extent sanitation, is a significant factor across many of the SDGs, but is focused through SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. which basically to ensure availability and sustainable management of water supply and sanitation for all. And that big word there is sustainable management. Okay, so then the target now is safely managed water supply and sanitation. So what is that? How different is that from the MDGs? Well, safely managed, I hope you can read here, probably not, a little bit small. This is taken from the WHO UNICEF GMP reports of 2023. And safely managed drinking water is drinking water from an improved source that is accessible on premises, available when needed, and free from fecal and priority chemical contamination. That might seem quite straightforward in most developing nations, but that's a big deal to reach that step for developing countries. For sanitation, safely managed, use of improved facilities that are not shared with other households, and where excreta is safely disposed of either on situ or removed and treated off-site. So that's the top rung there is safely managed, and that's our target. Okay, so what's the progress since the 2015 when the MDGs ended? So we're looking at, okay, let's focus on safely managed. I won't go through everything else. If we're looking on the left-hand side, we've got the progress for the worldwide for drinking water supply. And we can see that safely managed is, we're at about 73%, up from 69 in 2015. So we haven't made a great deal of progress, given that after this year, there's only 7 years to go until the end of 2030, and yet there's a 27% gap already. In contrast, we see sanitation in a worse position, which is probably not surprising to most of us. And we can see there's only 57%, and so 43% of the population of the world don't have access to safely managed sanitation. So we can see here that there's, for East and Southeast Asia, we're looking about 36% versus the 43%, and 21% versus the 27% globally. So Southeast Asia, East and Southeast Asia is doing a bit better. I've noted here that facilities emptied and treated is 1%, and wastewater treated 59%. And that's basically because most of the developing countries don't have access to wastewater treatment plants or fecal sludge management facilities. Oops. Okay, just looking at a quick look at the progress in Southeast Asia, where Anastasia and myself are working. Again, looking at these figures here for Cambodia, 29% access for safely managed drinking water, 37% for wastewater. Indonesia, 30% access to safely managed water. Sanitation, we don't know. In Laos PDR, 18%. Malaysia, the two standouts are Malaysia and Singapore with 94% and 99% in terms of drinking water supply. And I think that's not surprising. But then you have Philippines at 48%, Thailand, not quite sure, but surprisingly, probably for Thailand, access to safely managed sanitation is only 26%. And Vietnam, we've got 58% for water and 44% for sanitation. Again, if you look at there's little access to wastewater or fecal sludge management facilities, and you can see in Southeast Asia, it's 2%, and wastewater treated 17%. So it's very low. So it's a big challenge for us. Just quickly looking, urban versus rural coverage, you can see that for drinking water supply, rural is a long way behind urban, and similarly for sanitation. So acceleration to meet SDG 6. If we continue the current level of investment on water supply, we're looking to, by 2030, we'll only be at 77%. That's 23% missing the target for the world's population. And if we look at sanitation, where we're looking at reaching maybe 65%, you can see that since 2015, sanitation has been on a steeper gradient. But even so, there are big gaps to cover by 2030. So that means we need to, in the next 7 years, we need to increase spending and infrastructure provision by 6 times for water supply and 5 times for sanitation. That's a huge jump. And I think it's not really possible. And I think most countries will not meet SDG 6. This was compounded also by delays of probably anywhere between 3 to 5 years by the impact of COVID. So maybe we should be talking 2035 and not 2030. But I don't think that target's going to change somehow. For East and Southeast Asia, we need to increase by 7 times and 3 times for sanitation. So there's a lot to be done. So, what are the common water sector challenges in developing countries? I split them mainly into technical and institutional. And you can see a lot of these will be very relevant and very obvious to many of us. But just picking out a few on the technical side, lack of engineered sewer and drainage systems. That's a big problem. That we call them combined systems, but they're not. They're ad hoc drainage systems which actually take some wastewater. Not designed at all. Mainly septic tanks, mainly of various quality standards. Some obviously infiltrate into the soil, some are sealed, but again, we're not quite sure until we open each and every one up. Lack of fecal sludge collection, treatment, and disposal. So that results in illegal dumping, whether it's at landfill sites, unused land, or in the rivers. Conventional sewerage is expensive and highly disruptive during construction. A lot of Asian cities are very densely populated, and retrofitting sewage systems is an absolute nightmare. So it's a big, big issue. And then we look at wastewater treatment. It's seen to be complex and expensive. So again, there's some sort of negative thoughts about this. And also look at the end is a view that higher technology, smart and digital solutions are too complex. Well, actually, I think it's all about awareness. I think we know that the higher technologies will actually, the black box side of it will be more complex, but the user side will be much easier and provide much better data information and performance. Institutional, just quickly on highlighting some of these. Political will and political interference in the water sector is very common, so it's hard to increase tariffs, etc. And overall, there's a lack of investment, and that's been a lack of investment over the past 20 to 30 years. Lack of long-term strategic development, master planning. A lot of places have separate agencies for water supply and sanitation, which gives us a lot of difficult interfaces working with government. And also there's the sanitation full cost recovery myth, that everyone thinks sanitation should be full cost recovery. And most of us know in the world that even in the most advanced countries, sanitation is still subsidized in one way or another, mainly through the water billing. There's also a low customer willingness to connect. This is particularly the case for sanitation. And the two ones here which link to the technology and digital solutions, lack of technical and operations and management capacity and expertise, and a reluctance to use higher technology solutions. I think it's a fear of the unknown is probably what that is. Okay, so just going to what we'd, water supply is a bit easier to deal with. Generally, it's far more accepted by communities. But in terms of sanitation, it's a difficult one to do, especially with being so far behind and with the conditions in most Asian countries. So we've developed not necessarily a new approach, it's just a long-term planning approach. And this was agreed, called citywide inclusive sanitation. And this phrase was sort of coined in a meeting back in 2017, 2018 in Tokyo amongst the major development partners to actually agree on a way forward and a standardization of terminology. And all this really means is have a long-term sanitation planning and development and be looking 50 years ahead. Where do we want to be in 50 years ahead? That's our dream, and how do we then plan the journey there, rather than doing ad hoc bits of sanitation or water supply development or whatever to meet perceived demand at that time. So it's really looking at a long-term approach. And one of the first option is to introduce fecal sludge management. This is not very popular, despite septic tanks being the main form of sanitation in the countries. It's a logical thing that we could provide 100% coverage for fecal sludge management and treatment quickly at low cost with affordable tariffs and charges. But many governments, they want to go, we want sewerage. So that's, again, something we've got to get over. Because what we say is you can provide 100% coverage. Yes, fecal sludge management is not perfect. It's not really the best long-term solution, but it gets you on board with sanitation very quickly and very early. But just, I think you can probably read some of these things and really what we're looking at. But basically, it offers a flexible approach that can be developed over time using the best and most appropriate technologies for sustainability and increasing coverage. And we see that smart water technologies and digitalization can be used very effectively in this. One thing you see is that, carry on? Okay, before I start on this, is we have an opportunity with developing markets because they have like we did with telecommunications, we jumped from wired to wireless technologies. We have the same opportunity to leapfrog in technologies by introducing smart technologies to new water supply and sanitation facilities and systems that are being built from scratch, which is the case. So again, we're really looking to expand on digitalization, smart cities from the get-go and not as necessary as a retrofit. So ADB and water sector digitalization, what are we doing? I'll just quickly run through some of these slides. As you know, on the little water drop on the right-hand side, there's lots of words there related to smart technologies, digitalization, etc. And this is how it may appear to developing country governments. A plethora of different things, and it's a little bit of a minefield. So we wanted to increase digitalization on our projects. You can see from 2020 to 22, there's a slow general increase in digitalization on our projects. And there's a few examples at the bottom, but we have many more. I have too many sheets to show you if I was going to do that. Okay, so a lot of the time we have to start talking to the governments and demonstrating what the benefits of digital technologies are. And so we do it in a very simple way for them, which is basically, especially in recent years, increased affordability. It's not an expensive option anymore. Improved customer experience, improved environmental protection through monitoring and the like, improved process excellence, the ability to use predictive maintenance, then on to regulatory compliance, reducing operational expenditure, increased capital efficiency, therefore increased revenues, increased resilience, workforce development, and ultimately meeting the SDGs, which is developing countries' main target. So barriers to uptake, I'll just mention a few. Multiple departments, so different objectives in different governments. They have responsibilities are split, and so there's often a difficulty working across government departments there. Resources, basically finance for hard infrastructure, and a preference to invest in other softer components than digital technologies. So again, we've always reinforcing the need to invest in digital technologies. Sustainability requires maintenance and capacity building of staff, and that can be quite substantial in a lot of countries. So I'll just move on. I see the time's clicking by. So ADB initiatives to promote digitalization in the water sector. We split this really looking at, we're concentrating to get an understanding. We have a lot of startups, some private sector involvement, some pilot studies to demonstrate what can be done with digital technologies. So our developing country governments can see what works and what doesn't, and what might be good for them. So we support innovative solutions and disruptive approaches, bring fresh perspectives, agility and a collaborative nature of working with the government, pushing boundaries and experiment with new ideas. New ideas is quite a difficult thing to push with governments, as in developing countries. And they can offer scalable and cost-effective solutions, quick to adapt to change, and ability to pivot and iterate solutions. Lessons learned. We've got an ongoing projects, so we can look at how can we get faster uptake from governments. Firstly, secure buy-in from the client and identify champions within the client organization. Importantly, align with existing regulatory frameworks and consult early and deeper with users and beneficiaries. So we're not just understanding at government level, but at consumers, beneficiaries, all sorts of stakeholder levels. Be creative, adaptive, and realistic, and develop a strong sense of collaboration among stakeholders. Okay, so again here, a bit more. We've got integrating digitalization into project preparation. So pretty much it's a standard situation now to include digitalization in all of our projects. So there's going to be a substantial amount of opportunities coming up. Increasing grants and investments, and in particular for co-financing with other partners to increase the value of investments. Fostering partnerships, increasing the mainstreaming and upscaling of our piloting, knowledge work and capacity development, and monitoring and reporting. There's some links here which you can access more information about us and what we're doing. And then, again, promoting this, we have grant resources for high-level technology funds, water financing partnership facilities, which the government of Spain is very kindly donates to. Technical assistance to improve water security and resilience through digitalization, digitalization of water management, and water organization partnerships for resilience. Then there's project support and e-marketplaces. And again, there's another publication here which might be of interest to some of you there. So I've run over a little bit here, but I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Olin, who will give us the Indonesia context. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Anastasia Carolina. I'm the Senior Project Officer for Urban Development in ADB Indonesia Resident Mission. So I'm focusing only on Indonesia. So I will bring a little bit of a brief introduction about Indonesia, so a glimpse of Indonesia. As we can see in the presentation, this is the map of Indonesia. Indonesia has lots of numbers of islands, so we have more than 17,000 islands. The population is more than 275 million people, concentrating in the big cities of Indonesia. And then, as we can see here, that Indonesia, like any other countries, is facing urbanization challenges. So Indonesia is a growing, developing country. Growing occurs in Indonesia. So Indonesia has continuous development of infrastructure, like, for example, toll road, and then water supply, as well as sanitation. And as we know that people are concentrating to live in the big cities, so there is urbanization challenges faced by Indonesia. So as we know that higher population, it means higher demand in water supply and sanitation system. In this case, it's a pipe network and also the treatment plants. In the absence of the system, the water supply and sanitation, people will start taking the water from the ground, and without a proper sanitation, it will mean possibility of groundwater pollution. And in the end, the consumption of this groundwater pollution will risk the environmental and as well as the community health. The second challenge faced by Indonesia, so the first one is more on the big city. The second one is more on the remote area of Indonesia, because Indonesia has lots of islands, as I already mentioned. So on the bottom, you can see the beautiful picture of island in Indonesia. So this is just one of the sample of how pretty Indonesia is. So if you have the chance, please come visit Indonesia. But despite its beauty, there is a challenge to provide a wide coverage of water supply and sanitation across the country, because Indonesia has many islands. So compared to the country with big mainland, I think it's going to be more challenging to ensure wide coverage in all islands in Indonesia. And what we are doing in Indonesia, so ADB now is financing a project named Emergency Assistance for Rehabilitation and Reconstruction. So we are focusing only on one city in Palu, which is in Sulawesi Island. And the focus here is to rehabilitate and reconstruct the city post tsunami and also earthquake disaster in 2018. The core concept is build back better, and through this project, we develop a source to tap a water system for the city. And on the right side, on the maps, you can also see that we also have sanitation projects in Indonesia, completed, ongoing, as well as the future project. For the ongoing project, now we have in 3 locations. For the future projects, for the sanitation, we're going to have 3 locations as well, and it's going to be implemented starting from next year. So I think this is also a very good opportunity for collaboration in the future in terms of the sanitation. This is about the emergency project, the water supply. So on the left side, you can see this is the picture of the earthquake and tsunami in 2018. It caused serious casualties, number of casualties and damages for the city. And the project, the emergency assistance project, builds amongst other the entire water supply chain, from the treatment of raw water sources from the upstream all the way to the household. So from the upstream, we finance the construction of the embankment, the raw water transmission, as well as the irrigation system. On the downstream, we construct the water treatment and distribution system up to the house connections. So it's really source to tap from the upstream to downstream. So it's like an overall approach for the water supply management system for the city. And in terms of the smart water management, we understand that there are 4 pillars for the smart water management. The first one is planning and developing, and then also distributing and managing. For the project that we have in Indonesia, for the water supply project, the smart water management features is related only on the planning and developing, not so much on the distributing and managing, like, for example, the use of smart water meter. It's not yet there. But in the context of planning and developing, we use the digital tools in collaboration with Asian Institute of Technology from Thailand, as well as from Japan, the Remote Sensing Technology Center. And we are funded by a grant from the Japan Fund for Poverty Reduction, GFPR grant. So we jointly implementing the reconstruction monitoring using satellite data. So we use various satellite data as the basis for planning as well as for monitoring. The purpose of this intervention, of course, to ensure that the government of Indonesia has the ability to use and maximize the use of these resources to rehabilitate and reconstruct the city post-disaster in 2018. This is just a sample of the planning, so I'm not going into the detail, but the key message here is the initiative used various satellite data to monitor the land movement as well as liquefaction area, and then monitor the building stability and monitor the damages in the area and how we can reconstruct them. So these very high resolution satellite imaginary data are being used to prepare the planning for the project. In terms of the monitoring, we also have developed a geospatial monitoring and evaluation platform, which we call the Geo Portal. So we can see ground motion, we can see displacement graph, we can see damages and other real-time data to really capture what happened on the ground. So going back on the smart water management, how we envision the future of the water supply in Indonesia. So in the 4 pillars of smart water management, planning, developing, distributing, and managing, if this whole 4 pillars can be implemented all together, it will make more reasonable and sustainable usage of water resources. And also it can act as an early warning system as the basis to formulate action plan for future uses. So what we envision for the future, in addition to the planning and developing, which already being implemented in the current project, is how we can ensure distributing and managing, but not only on the domestic use, but also on the non-domestic use. So we envision a more holistic approach on both the domestic, means the household, and then the non-domestic, for example, the agricultural use. So for the domestic use, as probably other colleagues also already presented, that the digital tools is very important, smart meter is very important, the digital tool will monitor the quantity and the quality of water. It can, among others, detect leakages as early warning system to ensure timely responses to reduce the exposure of contamination. So in the end, the focus on the domestic use is to strengthen the environmental and community health. And then on the other side, for the non-domestic use, for the agricultural use, it's very important for Indonesia because Indonesia is also an agricultural country, right? So the use of digital tools will ensure that the operators and then the farmers, the private companies, they will have the ability to monitor and control the water quantity. So the whole system is a climate responsive system. So it can predict, it can make a projection on the future water consumption to avoid, for example, droughts or water scarcity. So in the end, the intervention on the non-domestic use will ensure food self-sufficiency, which is very, very important for a country like Indonesia. So we are envisioning this kind of future on the water supply in a more holistic way on the domestic and also the non-domestic use. Lastly, this is also the map from Indonesia, and you can see a few pinpoints. We have 8 pinpoints on the maps. So ADB has supported the preparation of the planning document for the development of 8 new water supply projects in Indonesia across the country. So in these 8 potential water supply projects in Indonesia, we are keen to further explore how the smart water management pillars can be embedded into the project. So with this brief explanation, I believe this information indicating that growing occurs in Indonesia, and there are lots of opportunity for collaboration in the future. Thank you.